Hey guys, welcome back. It's Jen, and today I'm going to show you how to make this adorable walrus cake. It's actually super easy. You get a big reward for little effort. So I chose a chocolate cake for this walrus, but you can do another flavor and color if you'd like. If you don't know how to bake a cake or frost a cake, you can watch my tutorials. And you don't have to start with a smooth cake. You can watch my tutorial how to frost a rustic cake, and that would be super cute as well. And that is the easiest way to frost a cake. Here's the tools you're going to need if you want to take a quick screenshot of this. I used 3 6-inch round cake layers to make this cake. So my cake's about 6 inches high by 6 inches wide, frosted. If you're using a different size cake than me, I suggest drawing a diagram of your cake by measuring it. Choose what size cookie cutters you think you're going to need and trace those on paper so you can make sure you like how it looks on paper before you put it on your cake. And try looking at your cake in a mathematical way. So you'll see that my nose, cheeks, and teeth is the bottom half of the cake, and then my eyes are placed about 3/4 of the way up the cake. And I place the eyes a little bit past the cheeks because Walrus's eyes are really far set apart. I do think character cakes look best on cakes that are as tall as they are wide. For the cheeks, I used the 1 3/4 inch circle cookie cutters, and for the eyes, I used the biggest of the set of the mini cutouts, which is about 1/4 of an inch wide. So let's start with making the cheek. So first you're going to dust your smooth workspace with cornstarch to avoid the fondant from sticking to it. Take out your white fondant and you're going to want to warm that up with your hands by kneading it, holding it, just until it's more pliable so you can work with it. If the fondant starts sticking to your hands or gloves, you can use Crisco and rub it on your hands and it won't stick anymore. So we're making gray cheeks, so you're going to want to grab a little bit of black fondant and knead that into your white fondant till it gets to the gray color you desire. Roll the fondant into a ball and get out your fondant roller, dust it with cornstarch, and roll out a circle. Roll this out till it's about 1/8 of an inch thick. And add more cornstarch to your workspace as needed. And just a side note, if you feel like your fondant's getting a little too dry from the cornstarch, you can go and add a little Crisco to it. Cut these out, and we only need 2, but I like to cut out as many as I can just in case we need backup. And remember to put your leftover fondant back into the fondant container. Okay, now let's roll out some black fondant for the nose. Put the cheeks on top of that and take some cornstarch and put it on your blade, not with your hands. You don't want to cut yourself. Look at the picture you drew and think about the math. So you'll see the nose goes about halfway to each side of the middle of the cheeks. So I like to make a slit there as a guide, and then the nose goes about halfway down the cheeks as well. So I make a couple slits there again as a guide for when I'm cutting. So look at the picture that you drew and just follow the shape of the nose. I like to hold the fondant so it doesn't slide around. I just use a sawing motion to cut out the shape I want. You can reapply cornstarch to the blade as needed. Don't worry if your edges are a little rough. You can smooth those over with your finger after you cut it out. So now you can move the cheeks out of the way and make a slice at the bottom about in the center, just again as a guide. So that center cut you made, think of it as kind of where you want the bottom point of the nose to be, so you know when to arc back up. And look at the side slits you did, the halfway marks, and the nose is a little bit higher than that. And take it out and you can smooth the edges now. You can also flatten it and reshape it after you take it out. Okay, put that fondant back in the container so it doesn't dry out, and then put the nose on top of the cheeks to see how it looks. So let's say you're like, no, I only do cookie cutters. So you can use that same cookie cutter to make the nose. Cut a circle out of the black fondant and put the cheeks over that. And then you can just trace the outline of the cheeks and cut into the nose there. And that's a really cute look as well. Okay, let's roll out the black fondant again, and then we're gonna cut out the eyes. And I do a ton of these because they are kind of a pain to work with because they're so small, so it's good to have a lot of extras. And I used the biggest one out of that set of the mini cutouts, which is a little bit bigger than 1/4 of an inch. All right, let's see how our walrus is looking here. Looking super cute already. Roll out some white fondant so we can make our teeth, and place the cheeks on top of that as a guide. And we're gonna really just make some long triangles here. So let's use our math again. So we're gonna want the points of the teeth to end up in the middle of, in line with the middle of the cheeks. And the teeth should be about as wide as 1/3 of the cheeks on top. And they should be about as long as half of the size of the cheeks. But make them longer because you're gonna wanna have room to glue the teeth underneath the cheeks. And let's round the tips of the teeth with our hands to make them look a little more natural. Smooth out any rough edges with our fingers, and then the cutting tool is really helpful here as well to get a nice straight edge if it starts to lose its shape a little bit. All right, let's assemble him again and looking even cuter. So you happen to be having trouble cutting out those teeth, you can find cookie cutters that are kind of the size of the teeth and cookie cut those. Okay, all we have left is the little dots on the cheeks. So we just need 6 teeny little round balls and push those into the cheeks. If you're struggling with this, you can take your smallest of the mini cutout set and take your eyes, extra eyes that you cut, and then just cut them out from there. Now it's time to glue some things together, and your glue is simply water. So put your pieces on parchment paper and grab your decorating brush, and you're going to brush water where you want your pieces glued together, and you just push them down and let them dry. Try not to get water on parts that you don't want to glue because it'll look a little shinier than the other parts. If this does happen, you can just wet everything and it'll all match, but be careful not to mix the black and the colors together. Glue the nose on the same way. Preferably you could have these dry overnight, but if you can't wait that long, just wait like 15 minutes and just check that it's all glued together. Also, preferably you'd want it to dry overnight too, just so the fondant hardens a little bit before you put it on the cake, because it just makes it more robust and easier to place on the cake and not fall apart. But again, if you can't wait, just give it about 15 minutes. Your fondant has been drying this whole time as you've left it out, and you should be able to place it on your cake after about 15 minutes. So there's going to be some cornstarch still stuck on your fondant, so you're going to want to take your decorating brush and brush it off as much as you can, but there'll be some still left. And this is where you can dip it in preferably Everclear liquor, which is illegal in some states though. So you could also use vodka, and you can dip it in there and just brush it all over the fondant to get rid of the cornstarch. The reason you use alcohol is because it evaporates quickly, so it won't leave it sticky, but you can use water to do this. Just know that it's going to be sticky, so just be careful. Also make sure you don't use too much water because then the colors could bleed into each other. And just make sure you brush the whole thing so it all looks the same color. And there's no need to clean the teeth. They're white anyways, and you just risk getting black on it. And you're going to want to do this obviously before you put it on the cake, otherwise you risk brushing the cake. I let my fondant pieces dry overnight, and my cake has been in the refrigerator, so it's nice and firm, and it's nice and dry and crusted over. So I'm going to put my leftover buttercream on the back of the fondant to act as glue. If you didn't save this or you ran out of it, you can go to Michael's craft store, the grocery store, and buy some frosting and use that. So I wanted to show you how your fondant can break if you touch it before the glue dries, when you glue on your nose, for example. Because it's wet, it's weak there. So really try not to touch it until it's totally dry, because it will break at these weak points. So as you're placing on your pieces, just refer to your drawing. Remember, the nose and cheeks and teeth are on the bottom half of the cake, and then the eyes are going to be placed a little bit further out than the edge of the cheeks, and 3/4 of the way up the cake. Since the eyes are so small, it's difficult to get the buttercream on the back of them, so you can just take your decorating brush and wet it and brush the back of the eyes and get them to stick that way. Refer to your drawing and make sure you place the eyes in line with the edge of the cheeks and about 3/4 of the way up the cake. And if you got some buttercream on your fondant, or you missed some of the cornstarch, you can go ahead and carefully brush this with a wet brush. Just be careful not to brush the buttercream. So that's it, guys. You know how to make a walrus cake. Great job. Congratulations. And he is so darn cute. Thank you guys so much for watching, and can't wait to see you next time.